There was a lot to like, still stuff to dislike, but Purdue gets out with a 28-point win over Minnesota.
You are Locked On Boilermakers, your daily podcast on the Purdue Boilermakers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Locked On Boilermakers here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Now, the number one sports podcast network where it is your team every day. I'm your host. I am Nick Arvin. I cover the Boilermakers every day here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Also write about Purdue for Purdue 24/7. And we've got a fun recap episode as Purdue, they win by 28. The first half looked a little bit rough, but in the second half, Purdue gets out on a 21-0 run, and they're able to beat the Minnesota Gophers. Today's episode is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. If you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long. But of course, I want to talk about this game today, and more specifically, I want to talk about what I liked for Purdue, what I didn't like, and ultimately why the result that happened tonight kind of happened. And if we go into the first half, I'll kind of tell the story of this game, how it started and going through. So to start out this game, I honestly thought that Purdue came out of the gates with a decent amount of intensity to start out the first half, mainly Braden Smith. He starts out the game 3 for 5, bangs down a 3. And that was really the story of this first half, was kind of Braden Smith and his ability to really score on offense. However, the issue kind of with Purdue in the first half is it felt like once they got a lead, and that lead did get up to 12 points at one point in that first half, it felt like they got a little bit content. It felt like they were fine where they were at and didn't want to finish out the half. And I think that for Purdue, that's something that absolutely cannot happen if you're a Boilermaker or if you're a Boilermaker fan. You don't want to see Purdue play the ends of halves and not finish strong. And a lot of it does come down to just not playing through your bigs. And that's something that we talked about on the pregame show. All of Minnesota's players, all of their guys in their front court, Cade Tyson, a very talented basketball player, but they're all 6'8" and smaller. So not that traditional big. And for you, when you got Cluff, you got Trey, Kaufman, Renn, who are two of the most talented bigs in the nation. You're going to want to take advantage of that. And we saw that to start out the second half. But in the first half, they just weren't going to that. And it really kind of felt like Braden Smith didn't have much help out there as he was kind of doing everything for Purdue in the first half. And ultimately, Purdue's 12-point lead, it started to shrink and shrink and shrink. Minnesota, they made a couple shots. They started to shoot the three ball at a decent level, although they didn't shoot at the best tonight. But anyways, they get into that game, and then the lead cuts down to 3 before halftime. And I'm sitting here thinking, why does this Purdue team go into this game after losing against Iowa State in a game that was embarrassing? You lose by 20 points at home. The speculation should have been that you go into this game and you dominate. You play with that fuel from that loss and realize, hey, we got to get to these national championship aspirations. We got to really kind of level up as a team and show Minnesota that they don't compare to us. That was what I wanted to see from this Purdue team to start out this game. And I think that's what a lot of people expected to see from this Purdue team. And ultimately, it just wasn't the case. In the first half of this game, at least, they didn't play up to that standard that I guess we should have hoped that they should have. And a lot of that, it does come down to playing through those bigs. We kind of learned as we got into the second half that was a much better strategy for beating this Minnesota team. I was really impressed with the guard play of Minnesota in terms of limiting Fletcher Loyer. He wasn't really able to shoot the ball a whole lot in this game. He did get a look where he had a 5-point play, makes the and one, misses the free throw, then gets it back for a 3-pointer. So eventually he made his mark. But in that first half, Fletcher Loyer just couldn't get anything in. That kind of goes back to it really just being the Braden Smith show. And on the broadcast, they were talking about a quadruple-double, triple-double. He didn't quite get to that in this game. Braden Smith ended it with 15 points. He did have a double-double. I think 12 assists. He got up to 12 assists, but 6 rebounds and 5 steals. Braden Smith had a really nice game tonight, and I can't speak highly enough of how he played. He does keep Purdue in that game in the first half. And For Purdue, the one thing I want to mention before we talk about how Purdue turns this game around and how they play much better is them limiting Cade Tyson. That was something that's going to be really big. He's the second leading scorer in all of the Big Ten. And for Purdue, when you're able to limit other teams' number one guys, whether it be a LeBaron Philon earlier in the year or a JT Toppin, and now going on to Cade Tyson, it's going to give yourself a really good opportunity to win that game because it makes Minnesota play through somebody else. And it took them a little bit in that first half. Minnesota has 32 first half points. But ultimately, Cade Tyson shoots 4 for 11, still has 15. But if you're a Purdue fan, if you're Coach Matt Painter, you'll take that any day. So Purdue does do a good job limiting Cade Tyson's production. I think that's why Purdue was able to stay in this game and ultimately take off, because as bad as it was in the first half, and I really don't know what the issue is in terms of this team just not being a great first half team. They kind of go into games slow, especially against opponents that maybe aren't up to that tier, maybe aren't that ranked matchup that Purdue has seen and did see against Iowa State. But no matter what the case is, I'm sure that we'll figure it out. Going into the second half, it was a completely different team. Looked rejuvenated. They started playing through their bigs. And then you start to see on the defensive side of the ball, when this Purdue defense is able to get consistent level of stops, it really flows for the offense. This is a team that needs both units to be playing good basketball to kind of reach its peak, because you play so much faster off rebounds, off steals. And Purdue hasn't been the best team at getting steals this year, to be honest. So you kind of have to get those stops on the defensive side of the ball before your offense is really able to flow. But it was able to flow in that second half. We talk about the 21-0 run, but it was really worse than that. Purdue outscores Minnesota in the second half 50-25. Just unreal efficiency. Minnesota really wasn't able to get much of anything. Cade Tyson still kind of continued to struggle in that second half. He didn't have the best night. Obviously, he has 15 points, but when you're able to limit him to 4 and 11, Jalen Crocker-Johnson was pretty good. He made a couple shots for Minnesota, but he just got into foul trouble. And then Purdue, they were able to beat up on those bigs where they don't have a ton of depth in that front court. And that was where Purdue really found that advantage. In terms of where Purdue's bigs were at tonight, Oscar Cluff was consistent throughout the course of this game, and I thought that he was incredible. Braden Smith had a behind the back pass to him that he was able to slam down. But Trey, Kaufman, and Renn didn't have the best first half, but had a strong second half, ended with 14 points. Cluff had 14. Both of those guys in double-figure rebounds, 10 rebounds for Trey, Kaufman, and Renn. Oscar Cluff had 11. So that means 3 double-doubles tonight. Oscar Cluff had one, Trey Kaufman, and Renn had one, and Braden Smith had a double-double. And then on the other side of things, Daniel Jacobson off the bench, he had 11 points as well. 5 rebounds. So this game was won with the bigs. It wasn't on display in the first half, and that's why Purdue struggled. But I feel like if you're able to take this forward, and we'll talk about momentum, the momentum Purdue can kind of get from this game here in the next segment, but specifically, if you can kind of take this momentum in terms of the way that your front court played tonight, Purdue isn't going to face off against many teams this year that are going to be able to stack up against them, at least in terms of size. In that front court, I don't think many teams are going to be able to out-rebound Purdue's front court, but I think that you got a pretty good display tonight that it kind of goes to show that offensively as well, if you're able to produce through that front court, Oscar Cluff, who is crazy enough, statistically the most efficient player in college basketball on the offensive side, if you're able to get him the ball, if you're able to get Trey Kaufman Renn that little floater, I think that Purdue's going to have a really good opportunity, and I think that that ceiling for Purdue's offense may be even better when you're playing through those bigs. And ultimately, what Purdue does this year, it's going to come down to the defense, and I can't stress that enough. But whenever Purdue's defense is playing good basketball, they weren't great tonight, but they were good enough for Purdue's offense to flow. They got enough stops, enough rebounds, got a couple steals, and ultimately, Purdue was able to outrun this Minnesota team. They were able to score enough, and they were just able to out-physical them inside. It took a little bit. It took a full half of basketball, but what happened in the second half kind of goes to show that this Purdue team, they have a lot to aspire to. There is a ceiling that this team can reach, and when they're at their best, they really are at their best. But how do they bring the momentum from tonight, from the second half, into Marquette and going into 2026? Well, stick with us. That's here next on Locked On Boilermakers. The holidays are officially here, which means gift hunting season is on. And if you want something meaningful, personal, and guaranteed to get a reaction, Aura Frames is the gift that delivers every time because it's not just something you wrap, it's a way to share memories because Aura isn't just your average picture frame. You can preload the frame with photos before gifting it, so when you plug it in, the memories are already there. No apps to figure it out, no setup headaches, just instant smiles. You can gift it to anybody, grandparents. Maybe you got kids. Maybe you want to show off some of their art projects. You can do that. Childhood memories. So many options that you don't have with a normal picture frame that Aura Frames provides you. It's a really great offer right now. For a limited time, you can save on the perfect gift by visiting auraframes.com to get $35 off Aura's best-selling carver matte frames, named #1 by Wirecutter by using promo code COLLEGE at checkout. That's AURA frames.com, promo code COLLEGE. This deal is exclusive to listeners, and frames sell out fast. So order yours now to get it in time for the holidays. Support the show by mentioning us at checkout. Terms and conditions apply. Before we get into how the momentum shifted tonight and how Purdue can shift the momentum into the rest of 2025, I want to tell you guys about a couple cool opportunities. So first of all, we're almost to 1,000 subscribers. We're a new show, but I really appreciate that. If you guys are new, if you guys haven't subscribed yet, I really do appreciate it. If you could do that, it is free. It means a lot. It helps us to bring you guys daily content. And then second of all, Purdue, Locked On Boilermakers, and of course, the Locked On Podcast Network, we're bringing you guys something a little bit new. It's the Everydayer Club. It's a really cool opportunity for all you guys. You already live your team every day. Now take it up a level and go ad-free. Join the Everydayer Club and get Locked On Boilermakers with no interruptions, members-only Discord access, and more. All just for $5 a month or $50 a year. But it's a great time in the Everydayer Club. Really hope you guys join. Let's talk about momentum. Let's talk about the momentum first in this game and kind of how it swung. I hit on it, how the bigs, and specifically Trey, Kaufman, Renn, Cluff, and Daniel Jacobson playing through them in the second half really allowed Purdue's three-point shooting to open up. It allowed everything on the offensive side to open up when Purdue may have been playing a little bit loose there in the first half. But why the shift? Why do I think that Purdue is going to be a lot better through their bigs? Well, it's not just about what they do down low, the way that they score. It's more about the attention that they get, the way that they collapse the defense, because then that three-point shooting opens up, and we saw it where CJ Cox was able to make a couple. But also, Purdue's front court, they aren't traditional bigs. Both Trey, Kaufman, Renn, and especially Cluff, who I saw tonight on the dribble handoff, where he was able to get it involved to shooters CJ Cox, Braden Smith on the outside, and then those three-point opportunities began to open up. It's tough to make a multi-dimensional offense when you're just trying to play through your guards. It really is, because it's easy to guard guys down low, no matter how good they are. It's just usually coaches are going to set their sights on that, and they're going to want to control that. But whenever you're able to assert that early, whenever you're able to get it down low and those guys start to produce on the inside, well, then your three-point shooters find a ton of success. And that's something that I think we saw tonight, and especially in the second half, that we may not have seen in the first half. And Purdue ends up shooting the ball pretty well tonight, all things considered, 42, 8 of 19. So not the highest volume, but you limit Minnesota to 24% from the three-point range. And I think that that's where Purdue also showed up tonight on the defensive side of the ball. I think that the perimeter defense was a lot better. Ultimately, that paint defense, it's going to be there just because of the quality of bigs that we do have. You have Daniel Jacobson, who is such an amazing shot blocker, but the ability to guard the perimeter when you face off against talented guards, when you face off against teams that are going to want to shoot the three ball. Yes, Minnesota isn't the best three-point shooting team, but still, it's something to build on. You can take momentum from that. That when Iowa State shot the ball crazy, almost 50% from three, you go into the next game and you are able to limit Minnesota in the matter where the other team beats you really bad. So that was something I saw for Purdue that was encouraging tonight, that I thought was going to be a good part for Purdue, is just their ability to do that. It was brought up that Purdue, honestly, is one of the worst teams, and actually the worst team in the Big Ten at getting to the free throw line and actually converting on those opportunities. Only shot the ball 68% from the free throw line. I think that's something that you look at later down the line in terms of trying to carry that momentum into tougher games with less margin of error. Free throws might be big in big games and important games. So that's something that you address down the line. But right now, not an issue that hurt Purdue tonight. You look back to 40-24 in terms of points in the paint. That's absolutely insane and much improved from where Purdue was when Iowa State beat Purdue in points in the paint just a couple days back. So definitely encouraging that they were able to play through their bigs. And I keep bringing that up. But the turnover margin, that's something that we hammer all the time on this show, is your ability to continue to try and claw and start winning some of these turnover margins. Tonight, it was 9-9. Minnesota, they won the points off turnovers by 10-8. So it wasn't as bad of a margin as we may have seen in the past against an Iowa State, but certainly something to continue to keep your eye on. But now for Purdue, it's where you go the rest of 2025. And somebody, I think it may have been Robbie Hummel, who brought it up on the broadcast for Minnesota specifically, when they talked about that Santa Clara game where they lose to Santa Clara. However, that second half could have been a lot worse than what it is. They play that game through. They continue to show that effort, even in the loss, and it kind of pulls forward into that Indiana game where they were able to upset the Hoosiers. And he brings that up, and it's an interesting thing because it makes me kind of think about where this Purdue team is and what they can do with the second half that they performed with tonight, because you have a really bad first half, and that needs to be addressed. It wasn't really bad. I shouldn't say really bad, but the way that it ended was really bad. Not showing that effort, not pushing through towards the end of the half. That was really bad. However, the ability to flip on the dime and going into the second half, make the adjustments necessary to go on that 21-0 run that starts the half. If you're able to continuously do that, continue to make those adjustments at halftime, I think that's a very valuable thing. And I think that that's something that you can get from games like this early in the season. But that also means that you need to fix something in the first half, and you need to find the answer to where that first half intensity doesn't become an issue, where you're able to continue to finish out the end of halves. I think that finding the balance between those two things is going to be a benefit for Purdue, kind of taking what you learn from a game like this tonight. But ultimately, you play up against a Marquette team on Saturday. It's going to be a quick turnaround for you, 2-day break. And then going forward, you got Auburn the following weekend, Kent State to follow up 2025. I think that finishing out this schedule strong, finishing out these last stretch of games and getting wins all the way through the end of 2025 is going to be really big for where this team's at and kind of their mentality going into conference play, specifically that game at Wisconsin on January 3rd. And I think you find something tonight, whether that gets brought over into the first half of that Marquette game. I think that's where the eyes go now. I think that that's going to be the big storyline going into that game against Marquette is, can Purdue use that same intensity that they had in the second half and play it in the first half and keep that intensity from the jump, finish out a half against a Marquette team that's not going to be up to Purdue's standards this year. That isn't what they have typically been under Shaka Smart. We need to see that against Marquette, and we need to see it going forward. You have an opportunity against Auburn and Indianapolis. That's going to be a ranked game and another resume builder, a quad one opportunity it should be, unless something crazy happens. But that's going to be another one where if you're able to carry the momentum from the second half over into one of those games, it's going to be big for you. But you have to catch that momentum. And I catch myself saying, during that first half, it looks like Purdue is good, but not great. It's one of those teams where, I mean, they're a very good team, but there's nothing that separates them because Braden Smith has to do so much of that work. But in the second half, that Purdue team looks like a national championship contender. It looks like a team that could outscore any team in the nation, that can beat anybody anywhere. So I need to find a balance between those two sides of this team. I need to find a side that doesn't play as consistently slow during parts of the half, because there are parts where Purdue, they just get into this slow rhythm and they're not really to generate a whole lot of offense. And then there are also times where they just go. They're able to get looks and get stops on defense and everything flows. But if you're able to find more consistency for the latter, I think that this team can go really, really far. I just haven't seen that consistency yet. Hopefully something was found out in this second half that's able to carry that momentum, carry a level of consistency in terms of that momentum forward. And this game against Marquette is going to be a huge tell on where Purdue is at, what their energy levels are to start starting these games out because they need an answer. They need an answer to that question in terms of where that first half energy is going to be, because eventually a team's going to come in. We saw it with Iowa State. They're going to play with more energy, and you're going to get yourself into a hole. Tonight, Purdue didn't get themselves into the hole. They were able to perform in the second half, and they get out of Mackey with a 28-point win. It was a fun one. The Boilermakers cover. My prediction came true, and I appreciate you guys making it this far, but I hope y'all stick around for the final segment on today's show where we talk bracketology. Joe Lunardi released a new one after Purdue loses to Iowa State. Where do they fall in? What can they do to make it up to that 1 seed? We'll have that here next on Locked On Boilermakers. NFL Sundays move fast. One big play, and suddenly everything feels different. That's what makes live betting with FanDuel so exciting. You're not just watching the game, you're reacting to it in live time. And with FanDuel, you can place bets as the action unfolds, every drive, every momentum swing, every highlight moment. And it's not just the NFL. As fun as it is to bet on the NFL with FanDuel, they have college basketball too. And if you were in on Purdue tonight, even if you were in on that Purdue minus 19.5 spread, with our friends at FanDuel, you are happy tonight because they sure covered that. I was in on it, and you could have been too with FanDuel. But don't wait, because Marquette is coming into town soon. You can get that game on Saturday. So if you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long. FanDuel, the game moves fast, and so can you. Final segment of today's Locked On Boilermakers. Let's do it. Let's talk about Joe Lunardi's bracketology that is not updated because of Purdue's win against Minnesota, but did come out yesterday morning. And I'm blind reacting to this. Haven't seen it yet, but I'd like to see where Purdue drops in this, where they have to go to get back up to, I assume they're not a 1 seed, but we'll see. I'm reacting to this as the same time as you. I'll break down my thoughts. The top overall seed is Michigan. And that's completely fair. And that's something that I also look at. A point that I wanted to make earlier is like Michigan, they're dominating every team that they're playing. And these are really good ranked games that they're competing in. So if you're a Purdue fan, you kind of want to get to that level. And there's a little bit of jealousy when you play against an Iowa State and you fall short, or you play a first half tonight and you're only up by 3 at the half. I feel like a lot of Purdue fans, and especially myself, we want to see this team play up to the standard of a national championship. And right now, Michigan looks like they are playing at that national championship standard. And I don't know if Purdue has quite played at the level that Michigan has played at, but nonetheless, they certainly do deserve that top overall seed, in my opinion. And that would give them a path to play their first couple games in Buffalo, which I don't know how many Michigan fans are in Buffalo, but there's certainly a decent amount in Chicago. And that's really what they would want, playing in that Midwest region. Michigan definitely deserving of that 1 seed. That moves Duke to the East region. They have the 1 seed there as well. No real surprise. Beating Michigan State, handing Michigan State their first loss of the year. Definitely deserved. Iowa State at the 1 seed in the South region. Now, this is really, really interesting in terms of Iowa State being that 1 seed. But I think that they can certainly be that. We saw how good they were when they faced off against Purdue, and their ability to play in that Big 12. I don't know if the Big 12 is as deep as the Big 10 is this year, or even the SEC. So I think that they'll have a good opportunity to beat a lot of teams in that conference this year. And Iowa State's opportunity to be that 1 seed this year, it's definitely there. But thankfully, Lunardi, and I do believe that they would be in that South region. So Purdue likely does not have to face off against them until the Final Four at the very beginning, depending on where Purdue is. But right now, I wouldn't want to see Iowa State in March. I don't want to see them again, quite frankly. They were a really good basketball team, but I'm sure Purdue would be more prepared if they played them come March. However, if we look at where Purdue is, let me find them right now. Like I said, blind reacting to this. They are not a 1 seed. Arizona is the final 1 seed. They fall at the 2, and they fall all the way to the bottom 2 spot in the West region of San Jose. That would put them in the same region as Arizona, and Arizona would playing in San Diego. That's definitely kind of an advantage for them, playing in the West Coast compared to Purdue. However, Purdue would be in St. Louis, rather, which would decent draw for them for their first round of 64 and round of 32 team games. So you got Purdue at the 2 seed, SMU at the 7. I'm fine with that. Houston at the 3 seed which is kind of interesting. Arkansas at the 6, North Carolina at the 4, Florida at the 5, Arizona at the 1, Indiana at the 8. This one is really interesting because it has Indiana the opportunity to win a round 1 game and face off against Arizona in round 2, which I think would be really fun if they're somehow able to pull off that upset. You maybe look down the line of a potential Indiana versus Purdue Elite 8 matchup, which would be absolutely insane. Whether Indiana can win a matchup like that, not quite sure as of now, but kind of what I see is that Lenardi speculates that if Purdue is in the range of a 2 seed, specifically one of those bottom 2 seeds, which they're at right now, they slide to the West region, and it's an absolute gauntlet for them with Arizona at the 1 seed, Houston at the 3 seed, you're the 2 seed, and then still teams like North Carolina, that's going to be a good team with Caleb Wilson at the 4 seed. They're going to make it pretty high out of the ACC. You even got teams like Arkansas, who, I mean, they were pretty competitive against Michigan State earlier in the season. That's a tough region to be in. And if I'm a Purdue fan, I'm hoping that Purdue can get up to that 1 seed because ultimately that's going to be the goal for this team this year. And we talked about it last week before the loss that if you can have a perfect world, if Purdue can get anywhere, ideally you want to be the number 1 overall seed and you want to beat Michigan. However you can beat Michigan, you want to beat Michigan because if it's between the two of you, whoever has the higher resume is likely going to be the number 1 seed in that Midwest region, which is going to be the prize that everyone in the Big Ten is chasing after. All the teams that want to be number 1 in the Big Ten. If you look at it, Michigan, Purdue, I guess Michigan State is kind of in that conversation, but all these teams that are fighting for those number 1 seeds right now, they want to win the Big Ten because they want to be in Chicago. They want to be in Chicago and then going into Indianapolis. It's the best possible route that you can get in this year's bracket, and I think that it's really important to realize that. And I think that all these teams do realize that. But if that's not on the table, and I'm not saying that it's not on the table because conference play is going to shift a lot of things up in terms of this bracket projection. But if you can't get to that top overall seed, getting a high 2 seed is going to be a lot more valuable than getting a low 2 seed because you don't want to face off against a 3, 2, and a 1 that could all legitimately be 1 seeds in a Houston team, a Purdue team, and an Arizona team. That's not the route you want. You specifically don't want the Western region because that's probably going to be the toughest in terms of that outlook. So just trying to find the best possible route if you're Purdue, but obviously it's still early in the season. Conference play is going to change a lot of things for the way that this bracket looks. And I think that Purdue is going to have their opportunity to win in. You look at it, facing off against Michigan. I think that game's at home a lot later in the season. That's going to be your opportunity to make your name known. I think they're going to play off again against Michigan in the Big Ten championship if they face off in the same or in different regions of that bracket. We're going to have to see, but I think that Purdue is definitely going to have opportunities to knock off this Michigan team this year, but it just comes back to me that I feel like it's just going to keep going back to this Purdue team, this Michigan team in terms of seeding in March for who can stack up the most wins, the most quad 1, quad 2 wins in order to build up that resume pushing for that Midwest seed. That's going to be the prize, the Midwest number 1. Hope Purdue gets it, but it's going to be a fun race the rest of the year. Keep an eye on the Wolverines because I think that they are really going to have a interesting competition in terms of that resume with Purdue this year. I think both those teams are far and away the 2 best teams in the Big Ten, but Michigan right now, they just look like a different animal. They definitely do. But we'll have to see. We'll see how that bracket updates, and we'll keep updating it every week here on Locked On Boilermakers. Thank you for joining us. Thank you once again for making Locked On Boilermakers your first listen today. And of course, we told you about the College Everydayer Club back earlier in the show. You guys have the opportunity, if you want to, $5 a month, $50 a year. It's going to be a great time, exclusive content. Join that up. But if Locked On Boilermakers made your Spotify Wrapped, you can prove it on social media to secure a free month of our brand new Everydayer Club. Just tag our national Locked On Podcast Network account on any social platform, and we'll drop you that code. Be one of the first to join the Everydayer Club to get your favorite show ad-free, and of course, that exclusive access to the members-only Discord channel. Please do that. If you are on our Spotify Wrapped, make sure you share it. Thank you guys for joining us. And as always, boiler up, hammer down.